Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Steve Brown. Steve, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Great to be here, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Steve, could you tell us about your professional background and your current role?
Absolutely. Head of business development at Star Compliance. I am a recovering compliance officer for all of those out there that can relate. I have been in compliance probably 20 plus some years in various roles, building and running investment banking compliance, control room compliance, which is near and dear to my heart. Fixed income capital markets compliance. Spent about 14 years at Wachovia and left in '07 before they went under, and spent a year at Goldman when they were becoming a bank holding company, and then 2 years at US Bank building out fixed income capital markets compliance, and then about a decade at PwC advising on risk and regulatory issues globally. During that period of time, I should say, I built out about 18 different control rooms, and that's where I met Star. And it's been a pleasure joining the team here. We actually just celebrated my third anniversary with Star.
Steve, you're probably aware, but you're one of the few people who have gone in the direction you've gone, meaning you went from the compliance chair, the CCO chair, to a product provider. I can only think of really a handful of you folks, if I can call you that. But what I
Sure.
find most interesting about that move is you bring a completely different perspective to the tech and product side as opposed to a tech or a product person who might be designing. So really going to be interested to explore how you've been able to bring those insights from your life as a compliance officer and now a recovering compliance officer, because I completely get that, into the product world. With that, could you tell us a little bit about Star Compliance?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to come back to that because there's a good story about my early days in compliance and some opportunities I had. But Star Compliance is literally, we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, which we're very excited about. Um, and so we are a SaaS vendor, totally focused on employee compliance. And I'll talk about that. We're a global firm in 117 countries around the world with over 400 clients. And we focus on employee conflicts of interest, material non-public information, and enterprise conflicts. And over the years, continuing with the employee compliance focus in the office of the chief compliance officer, if you will, we've expanded to include things like the senior manager and certification regime in the UK. And that has morphed into other countries, Ireland and Australia most recently, but also Hong Kong and Singapore, that deals with individual accountability. And most recently, we have broached out to include an incident and policy management solution. So if you think about whistleblowing and the like, but again, just very much focused on employee ethics and conduct.
Steve, one of the most important things in any corporation is culture. And I'm always fascinated how a tech solution actually enhances culture. It could be because people know somebody's watching and that may lead to behavior that you want. People may say, my behavior is being measured so we can determine if there are any issues that need to be tweaked, monitored, updated, remediated, whatever the case might be. But I was wondering if you could maybe say a few words on the role of a tool like a tech solution like Star Compliance in an overall corporate culture, because it strikes me as a recovering compliance officer, you had to think about culture a lot in your former life.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and you can take it in many different directions. To me, though, culture, it really does all come back to the individual, to people. And while a SaaS solution like Star is helpful, if you don't have the right people in the right roles to determine what the culture is, then it's going to be really difficult. But if you have the tools, you have the right people, and then you have the right tools, there's so much data that is out there now. And at Star, I know this sounds hokey, but we really do try to make the process simple and easy. And we really do try to, as we think about it, our clients, the majority of our clients are not compliance people. They are business folks. And So it's important for us to think about how can we get those employees, whether they're bankers, brokers, financial advisors, sales, trading, research, what have you, into Star, allow them to do what they need to do, get them out as quickly as possible, and make the experience a one that's simple and easy. But then on the backside, and then getting to your point, Tom, providing the data and the necessary information to compliance folks to help monitor and determine if there are issues, identify issues. And so that's where the data and the workflow comes in.
Steve, from your employment history that you went through, I'm going to assume you have seen a lot of tech solutions. You've worked with a lot of different vendors, and you chose to go to Star. And I have to assume there was a reason for that because you were impressed with the solution and you thought you could bring additional subject matter expertise. Could you tell us what it was about Star Compliance that you found so intriguing, both as a company and for their solution?
Yeah, early in my career, and this goes back to the late 90s, early 2000s at what was First Union and now Wachovia and now Wells Fargo. I had the good fortune of building a employee trading compliance control room, watch list, restricted list solution in-house and learned a great deal. I was in my late 20s, and so I've carried that forward. And so when I got to PwC and I started working with a plethora of different clients, buy side and sell side, inevitably folks were asking, who are the vendors that are out there? And so even today we see solutions, some of which are very nice and some of which are very manual, and then other SaaS providers. And so I just got to know the SaaS providers that were out there, including Star. I got to know the people at Star. I really like to use the word culture again. I really like the culture of the people at Star. And so when Jennifer Sun, our CEO, called me up, and I guess it was March of 2020, and said, we've got this new role, head of business development. When I like Tom, I jumped at the opportunity because it enabled me to move from consulting to a reg tech firm that was totally different and a new challenge. And I felt like that I could offer something with some real practical experience from a compliance seat.
Steve, what is the Star difference?
I really do think that it's the people. The people here and the culture we have is, and again, I know this sounds hokey, but we really want to see our clients win. We want to do right by our clients. And we have people like myself that are practitioners in various roles, from everything from the early days of sales and marketing through product and development, through our services organization, that really want to do right by our clients. And no organization is perfect, and we certainly are not, but we try. We really try, and we really care. And we really understand, because of folks like myself that have decades of experience, we really understand what our clients, those compliance people and the business people that are using our tool, are going through on a day-to-day basis, helping them manage the risks and the challenges of the capital markets that we live in, which is constantly changing.
So, what are the solutions or STAR's compliance solutions built for tomorrow's regulatory challenges?
Yeah, that's where we constantly update what we call our strategic plan, and we're doing that now. And part of our strategic plan is looking forward to the next 3 to 5 years, what's on the horizon. And you can't talk about what's next without talking about AI and machine learning, generative AI, large language models. I'm personally very excited about them. It is amazing what those tools will do. I think that it's still to be determined how capital markets organizations use AI, machine learning, generative AI on the business side, but then likewise on the compliance side. And so I think that there are opportunities to leverage things like generative AI to help with compliance surveillance, to help with compliance research, to help with regulatory horizon scanning. And so those are areas that we're excited about and thinking about how we can leverage that information as well, or those tools as well, I should say. The thing about the capital markets that I love is that It's constantly evolving and changing. And so who knows what the next thing is going to be in 3 to 5 years, Tom. I've lived through everything from the early derivative days through credit default swaps, through structured products, through the upturns and downturns of the market. And I think that the main thing is that we try to be nimble and try to stay in touch on a personal level with our clients and with the market to keep our finger on the pulse of like what's going on, what's changing, what are the new products and services, and how can we help them from an employee compliance perspective.
Let me turn to one of the newer legal issues that I have seen pop up that frankly, I'm still struggling through both on an intellectual level and a practical compliance angle, and that's shadow trading. I certainly understand shadow insider trading. I certainly understand insider trading. In my mind, fairly long and established rules on that, particularly if it involves your organization or information you get inside your organization on a confidential basis. It could be about a potential acquisition. It could be about a potential joint venture partner, any number of things. I struggle a little bit with shadow trading because in many ways that seems to me as, hey, somebody might just be doing some really good research. But we had a big conviction over that in March with Matthew Penuat. And now people like you and me have to develop a solution that we can present to companies, both in terms of monitoring, but also a definition and training. Could I maybe ask you how you guys have thought about that at Star Compliance? And have you developed, or maybe are you getting questions, and how are you counseling people at this point, recognizing we're still relatively early in this development of this new initiative?
It's when that case first broke about a year and a half ago, I suppose, I thought that it was really fascinating. And I'm a control room insider trading geek. I very much appreciate the case law aspect of it because I think that really drives what firms do, whether it's buy side or sell side. C says that shadow trading case is not novel, but I think that it truly is. When you look at traditional theories and misappropriation theories of insider trading, with this one, as you said, Pennerwatt used his knowledge to acquire not a stake in his company, but in a comparable company through call options and took advantage of the share price increase before it sold. Frankly, Tom, and I wrote this in a blog a while ago. I think that a really interesting way to approach this and what we're looking at is to leverage things like Git codes or the Refinitiv business classification codes to leverage. So if a firm knows and has material non-public information, they're tracking it on their watch list or restricted list, and they're able to tie that company to a sector code and then look at the trading of their employees based on that sector code. I think that could be a very helpful tool in monitoring and surveilling employee trading, try to get out ahead of any instances where shadow trading might be involved.
Let me change the focus just a little bit, Steve, because I have a friend who uses the term user experience, and he is a sort of a design thinking aficionado. And he says it's all about the user experience. And I shorten that to it's all about the UX. And you've got a newly updated user interface at Star Compliance. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think that really helps improve the user experience of the UX? Once again, drawing on your 20 plus years experience as the UX.
Yeah, as I said earlier, um, we have more users that are business individuals than compliance users. And so we have to think about whether it's mobile or on a desktop. If you've got a banker that's on the road and wants to share the latest on a deal, or have a salesperson or financial advisor that is looking to trade a security, what is going to be their experience coming into Star trying to pre-clear a trade? And so when we were updating our UI, we very much thought, okay, there's a lot of wonderful looking tools that are out there. How can we make that experience coming into Star, what the person sees straight away as they go through the workflow, make it visually pleasing to the eye and also intuitive? And so taking all of those things into consideration was how we went about designing the upgrades to our UI, and ultimately it's going to lead to the UX as well. So as we think about it, the user interface, the user experience, you've got to do both, and it's not always, for those on the tech side, it's not always easy. It takes time to update that and keep things fresh, and so it's something that we constantly work on.
I was particularly gratified, frankly, about your remarks that Star Compliance and its customer base of business executives as opposed to compliance professionals, because it strikes me that if business executives are using the tool, obviously it's going to help business and drive ROI. It's going to help compliance and it's going to actually help culture. And that really leads me into wanting to ask about a comprehensive compliance solution. You've talked, or we've talked in this podcast about several different parts of compliance: culture, training, incident management, employee compliance, and of course, a tech solution. Why do you think it's so important to have really that holistic or comprehensive solution available for clients?
Again, because I've been around for a while, and I sometimes say I'm an old compliance guy. I remember back in the day sitting in a chair that swiveled and having to go from one monitor to another, turning around and trying to leverage multiple tools. Being able to bring that information together, Tom, and have it holistically in a place that allows for insights and trends is the ultimate goal. And we are constantly challenging ourselves to further move in that direction. And so I think eliminating the swivel chair effect, bringing data together through a data warehouse, a data lake, allowing the compliance user to leverage tools like ThoughtSpot or Power BI or Tableau to gain insights into trends and patterns, whether it's around employee trading or conflicts or institutional trading, the ultimate goal. And is there's just so much that's out there. And as I think about it, I've always been what I've called a pro business compliance person. And that means that we're in this, we have this rule because we have a business. Yes, there are regulations, but generally speaking, we can find ways to accomplish what the business wants to accomplish. If you apply that dynamic to what we do at Star and thinking about it from a service provider perspective and try to build solutions that are helpful for our clients, it's a win. Just one last thing I'll say is availability of information that the regulators have globally. And you think of just here in the States with whether it's CAT or whether it's through the sweeps they do or through semantic technology, firms have got to be prepared to be at least on par with where the regulators are to stay ahead so they're able to identify problematic areas. And so if if regulatory sweep comes in, at least the compliance team can, one, either be aware of it already or quickly be able to pull the information together to help manage the regulatory risk.
You've mentioned AI several times in this pod, but I wanted to focus on data analytics. And I was really intrigued by, once again, you were remarking about the business uses for the Star Compliance solution. But how can data analytics both help a compliance function, but also a corporate function in a corporation or a business utilizing your tool on either determining trends or helping in decision making?
You think about where, since the financial crisis, and both here in the States and also in Europe, the trends and patterns that the regulators have put in place around lines of defense. And the first line, the business; second line, compliance; third line, an audit. And the expectation, the regulators, that the business owns the risk. And forever, I think compliance has wanted the business to own the risk more. I think that it's evolved dramatically over the past, call it 15 years. Being able to provide the business risk control groups within the first line, along with compliance, and have common data where insights around potential front running issues, market manipulation, insider trading of whatever ilk in conflicts, being able to pull data together in a user-friendly format that the first line, in the second line, in the third line can use is just the model that firms have got to be thinking about. And it's not easy. And I think that even the bulge bracket firms still struggle with this, but I think that's what firms have to be thinking about.
Steve, I used to ask people, where do you see all of this down the road at 2025? But now that's next year. I get to say, how about mid century, like 2030? Where do you see this evolving landscape of compliance technology, anticipating future trends, but also anchored in protecting companies and even employees from violating the numerous and ever changing regulations that they are required to follow?
That's a great question. We think, and I think also that there is a convergence of ethics and conduct with respect to compliance. And what I mean by that is that um, firms have HR teams, ethics teams, compliance teams. There's so much information that is not shared amongst those three groups that has the potential to be shared. We think that by combining the information, the data that's available, it providing it to HR, ethics, and compliance professionals, and even legal counsel within a firm, it will make the roles, the jobs of those professionals easier to look at the culture, the trends and patterns of the company to help them manage risk. Simply said, just that convergence of ethics, HR, compliance, we think is a trend, that a pattern that's going to continue.
Steve, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if our listeners wanted to connect with you, any more information on Star Compliance or any of the topics we touched on, what might be the best places for them to go or the best way for them to do so?
Love to hear from listeners, from clients, from prospects. www.starcompliance.com is our website. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me directly. Feel free to reach out to us via the website. We hold quite a few events throughout the year. I'm a big fan of small roundtables. Love to interact with people and keep up with what's going on, and hear of the challenges that folks are trying to deal with.
Well, Steve, I wanted to thank you again, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate you having me today.